Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we'll have a webinar that shares key findings from our implementation study of the AP Access for All program, which is Tennessee's innovative model offering asynchronous AP courses statewide. We'll explore what's working, what's challenging, and what we've learned from educators, researchers, and policymakers involved in this work. As we go through today's discussion, feel free to type any questions that you have into the chat. We'll leave some time at the end of our discussion for Q&A, so don't worry about holding your questions until then. So, my name is Raven Powell. I am the Senior Research Partnerships Manager at TERA. But today I'll be moderating this panel, and we have with us today Dr. Nicole Mader, who is the Senior Researcher and Director of Data at TERA. She led the APAA study. Tammy Wolfe, who is the Career Counselor in Kingsport City Schools and also the AP Lead Liaison. We have Charles Van Hock, who is the AP coordinator in Metro Public Schools, and he's also an APAA liaison. And then we also have with us Deborah Knoll, who is the Assistant Commissioner of Postsecondary Workforce, CTE, and Military Readiness at the Tennessee Department of Education. Thank you all for joining me today. So a little bit about the study that we'll dive into. TERA's implement study of the AP Access for All program. It was a mixed methods project conducted during the fall of 2023. We worked closely with the Niswonger Foundation and the Tennessee Department of Education to complete this project. For the study, we hosted 5 focus groups with 29 AP liaisons and surveyed 161 AP liaisons to learn about the varying approaches to implementing this program. We coupled that qualitative data with data stored in TERA's data warehouse to understand 2 key questions. What practices are program staff using to recruit, enroll, and support students in the AP Access for All classes? And also, what school level factors are predictive of high rates of AP Access enrollment and success? School level factors mean things like the percentages of students who are economically disadvantaged at a school, where the school is located, in such as in an urban area, rural, or suburban area. So, before we dive into answers to those questions, let's ground ourselves in the AP Access for All model itself. So, to get us started, Tammy, as the lead AP liaison, can you walk us through some key features of the AP Access for All program?
Certainly. So the APAA program essentially allows high school students to take AP courses online through Niswonger. It in the event that they don't have AP classes at their school, or maybe the class that they need isn't taught during the time that they need it. So it removes barriers. It includes all students, and the APAA program also offers resources to make sure that students are going to be successful and succeed in the AP courses.
Thank you so much. And so, Deb, could you tell us what sets APAA, or the AP Access for All program, apart from other EPSOs or early post-secondary opportunity models?
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to kind of reiterate kind of what Tammy said, what really sets AP Access for All aside from all other early post-secondary opportunities is the intentional focus on equity. It's not just designed for students, like in large, well-resourced schools. It's really built for any student in any zip code. And I think that's really important. So we're talking about those in rural, remote, or underfunded communities. Because we know that a lot of these communities already have faced these real challenges. They just don't have enough certified AP instructors. The student population isn't large enough to really justify that full AP course. So that really is the foundational pieces of it. So when you think about other EPSOs, or early post-secondary opportunities like dual enrollment, it really often depends on like specific partnerships with local colleges or on-site faculty, where AP Access for All is fully online and really intentionally statewide in scope. So you don't have to have those direct partnerships. It really just kind of open up the doors there. So we all know that, the AP Access for All courses are College Board approved, that ensure that national rigor and alignment. They're taught by licensed Tennessee educators. It's not outsourced. So there's a true level of accountability, connection, cultural understanding that supports the student success. So those are just a couple ways. Also, to Tammy's point, AP Access for All is very flexible by design. So they can take the courses during the school day, or they could take it outside the school day. So that really kind of puts it on the level playing field of other EPSOs, but also allows that flexibility because, they can embed it into the regular academic schedule or offer it as an extension opportunity. So just like other EPSOs, there is credit that can be earned. So they can earn that same AP credit and sit for the same exam as their peers in traditional brick and mortar settings. So the academic standards don't change, but that barrier to access does. So I think that is what truly sets it apart from other EPSOs, is just about breaking down that barrier to access.
Thank you so much. So it seems like, for one, this is a really great program, but also it seems like that this program requires a lot of input from folks that work in the schools, so like maybe on that ground level. And so I want to talk a little bit more about one of the most critical roles in implementation, which is the AP liaison. So Tammy, could you tell us, as your work or as you work as an AP liaison, the lead AP liaison, how does your role influence student enrollment and success in the AP Access for All program at your school?
Well, essentially, the liaisons serve as somewhat of a recruiter for the program to help promote it and to tell students about the program. Nice Longer provides us with all kinds of materials to place around the school as well. We explain it not only to students and parents, but also to administrators and the other counselors to help everyone completely understand the program and what it's designed for. Um, and then with that said, we enroll the students as the liaison itself. And so we serve as a critical role to help promote the program and enroll students.
Thank you. And Charles, we also know that you're working as an AP liaison. And so could you add to that and tell us a little bit more about how you have helped student success and uptaking the program at your school?
Yes, thank you. I'm in a little bit of a unique situation because I work at an asynchronous virtual high school at Metro Nashville Public Schools. And so a lot of the things that in a brick and mortar school that are barriers might not be that kind of barrier to us because our students are already used to that. They're already used to working on online and having due dates and doing those types of things. So at my role as a liaison for the APAA program, because our students don't interact in traditional classrooms, we rely heavily on digital outreach. We send personalized messages. We host virtual information sessions. We analyze the data from our students to see if there might be some students that might benefit from AP courses that have not necessarily considered them yet. And by doing that, we are able to recruit that way. We serve all of Davidson County, and so we have a large recruiting area that we can pull from. Also, a typical day for liaison, in my case, would be responding to emails, responding to chats, coordinating with the APAA instructors, because that's important to have them also be sure that I can coordinate with them so that they can coordinate with our students. And by doing that, I help students by setting up pacing guides, especially if they get behind, or helping them understand the expectations of the program. And that helps them keep on track, keep their confidence level up, and helps me help them to be able to get those scores and finish those assignments.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Charles, for sharing. And Nicole, as a lead of this AP Access study that TERA did, could you tell us a little bit more about what your research revealed about how the AP liaison role is structured?
Sure, thank you. So we surveyed, as you mentioned, we surveyed about 160 AP liaisons. The majority of them said that they were also counselors, 60% of them. 60% were also AP coordinators for their schools, not the same people. So some counselors serve also as AP coordinators. Both of those roles give a really good experience to prepare you for being a AP Access for All liaison. The counselors can look at the holistic picture of the student's readiness for AP Access for All. They can look at transcripts and consider the balance of a student's coursework within the semester. And a lot of them said that they have those conversations with each student before signing them up to make sure that they're ready to take on the rigor of the AP Access for All coursework. About 15% of the people we surveyed said they were classroom teachers as well as AP liaisons. So that also gives you a different skill set. Maybe you teach some of the same subject matter. You might be a history teacher helping a student take an AP history class as an AP Access for All class. So that could help you support the students in a way that's more subject specific. But the counselors and the AP coordinators had a lot of experience with some of the back end scheduling and logistics. AP coordination is also something we talked about a lot in our focus groups. We heard that the registering and signing up for exams at the end of the year was really complicated for liaisons who didn't have that AP coordination experience. So they go from maybe having no AP students in their school to all of a sudden now having 5, 10, 20 kids that are taking AP exams at the end of the year. And that's a lot of, and some of them are all taking different classes. So that's a lot of tests to coordinate. So at the beginning and the end of the year, the back-end coordination tasks can be a lot to juggle with the other tasks that every liaison is managing. So we found that the counselors are already juggling a lot of tasks, and they were very well suited to do that.
Great, thank you. So it sounds like every school pretty much brings a different context to the APAA program and what it may look like at that particular school. And so we know that the challenges vary across schools. So let's dive into the logistics conversation a little bit more. And so, Charles, I know you mentioned a little earlier, you work at an asynchronous, like online school. And so your students are familiar with, like, they're a little bit more tech savvy. But in your general experience, have you faced any, or what other type of logistical challenges have you faced while trying to implement this program at your school? And maybe how, even tell us how you overcame some of those challenges.
Sure. So one of the biggest challenges that we face is ensuring smooth registration and onboarding for the APAA courses. Students often face tech issues like login problems, unfamiliar platforms, and that might delay their start, cause frustration, and especially the platform, because our students are so used to getting everything in one platform. When they sign up for our AP courses, they have to go out to the APAA platform. And so just getting them used to doing that, making sure it's smooth is one challenge that we have. Strategies that we used to help that, because we recognize that. We have an APAA launch week where we host virtual onboarding sessions. We troubleshoot tech issues in real time during that time. And we ensure that every student knows how to access their course and how to access their instructor for the APAA course that they're signed up for. Doing this helped increase our students' confidence, and therefore helped reduce the number of drop-off that we had at the virtual school.
That's great. And you said that was the APAA launch week. Just trying to take some mental notes for participants when we send out some information after this webinar. So that's great. Thanks for sharing. And so, Tammy, could you, are there other logistical challenges that you've seen liaisons face as the lead AP liaisons? And if so, have you seen those challenges vary between the types of schools, and how are they kind of overcoming those challenges?
So the more rural schools that have just a few students participating, those liaisons typically end up having to not only place the order of the exam, but they have to sometimes administer the actual exam if they're at a small school. So, and they probably wear many hats. So that's taking up time. Typically, an exam is a 4-hour exam. So that can be challenging, especially during that period of time of the year in May when students are preparing for graduation and so forth. So, and as you said, those are typically counselors maybe in those positions. But there are other ways that you can administer exams and have a different proctor. But they have to train those proctors, and so they have to know what to do, or they have to train the proctor to give the actual exam. So they have to be knowledgeable about exam proctoring. Um, and so that, in comparison to a large school, such as where I'm from, our students may, be able to jump in on an exam that is already being given at the high school, but it would be through the APAA program. And so that is way less of a challenge for a larger school that's already offering that exam. And, just especially those that are in a smaller school, the online school, such as what Charles is involved with. I know that those liaisons are having a difficult time across the state trying to find a brick and mortar site for their students to test, because not all schools allow for outside students to test at their school. Specifically because if there is a no-show and an unused exam, there is a $40 exam fee that is going to be incurred. And the school is not going to pay for that, neither is APAA. So that's another challenge that needs to be considered if someone is testing at your site that is not one of your students. So definitely some challenges. There are ways to overcome that. If a student is going to test at my school that is not a DB student, then I would have to collect a $40 fee just to ensure upfront that they will be there, and then I can certainly refund that $40 thereafter. So that's easy to overcome. As for the rural schools that may not have, the resources to test, there may be some other options, and such as, maybe a local community college. If you get someone from a local community college that's a sophomore, and you train them to administer the exam for volunteer hours or whatever you may find. But there are some creative ways to get around that.
That's great. Thanks, Tammy. I'm sure as the lead AP liaison, you just have some insight that we really wanted to present to this audience. So and same for you, Charles. So thank you so much for sharing those challenges, but also the ways that you're overcoming them. And the hopes is from this conversation, some AP liaisons can take this back or to their schools to better their programs, or if some folks are kind of on the meeting that are looking to start the AP Access for All program, maybe at their schools in the coming years, then they have just some tips and tricks from experienced liaisons as yourself. So thank you so much for sharing that. But from our study, we know that some schools have made APAA a real success and effectively engaged students in these courses. So let's talk a little bit about what strategies are working to engage students as they go through this asynchronous process. So Nicole, can you share examples that you found in the study of successful practices that promote student success?
Yeah, we were actually very excited to find some numbers that came from our survey that were really highly correlated with student success and enrollment in the AP Access for All classes. So we found two successful strategies that really jumped out. So the first was reaching out to the AP Access for All students to check in throughout the semester, not just on the online course management system, but with like personal emails or phone calls or text messages to those students to really get to them and make sure that they're progressing through their assignments on schedule. And then the other strategy that popped out was giving students a dedicated time and space for doing their AP Access for All work. It works differently at a virtual school, of course, but in most of the schools participating in the program, they would sometimes provide a independent study for a AP Access for All student in their schedule, but not necessarily a place to do it. And the quality of that time and space really mattered. We heard from the liaisons. Some of the schools were assigning students to the cafeteria or in the back of a classroom with a similar subject area. And that doesn't seem to be as effective as having a space like the library where students can go. It was quiet with a stable internet connection and someone who could be there to answer questions if a tech problem came up, or a teacher who with some content knowledge could be helpful too. So that made a big difference at those schools. And we saw it in the numbers that we crunched for the study. Also, if there are multiple AP Access for All students at the school and they're working in the same space, even if it's after school, it doesn't have to be scheduled, but if there's a place they can go and work together, they can motivate each other. Even if they aren't taking the same course and working on the same assignments, it was really helpful. Some of the liaisons organized lunches for those students so they could just gather and talk and build some camaraderie. And so that seemed to be a really good strategy. So all of that recognizes that high school students still have a lot of difficulty doing online asynchronous coursework completely by themselves. I know students at Charles's school are much more used to that, and I'm sure they're very successful, but a lot of students don't have as much practice with virtual learning. And so telling them, here's this list of assignments, you can spread them out throughout the semester and work on your own time, that's really hard for high school students still. So having a liaison who could check in with them regularly and then give them a time and space that they should go to keep working on it throughout the semester was a very successful strategy.
That's great. And Nicole, I just wanted to do a quick follow-up question. So when you say gather the schools, because I think Charles mentioned, or maybe Tammy, they have a lot of different programs, maybe inside of one schools where students are taking the asynchronous AP classes. And so when you talk about gathering students, is it okay for them like multiple different courses and then the students that are taking those courses to gather, or does it need to kind of be delineated by the courses? Did the study reveal any insight into that?
We didn't ask in that detail at the survey, but I remember some of the focus group conversations going into that and how at the smaller schools, you might only have 5 students enrolled in AP Access for All, or maybe even just 1 student. And so you don't have the opportunity for them to all be in the same class and work together. I think that one of the other things that we learned about that is that if they did if all the students in the school are taking 1 or 2 AP Access for All classes, it does help because they can work together on their coursework, or at least just talk to each other about it. So in the bigger schools, that is a possibility, but at the smaller schools, you don't have that many students taking the same AP Access for All class. So just gathering them as students who are working online and sitting together and motivating each other is also still helpful, even if they're not sharing the same course.
Thank you. And so, Tammy, as the lead AP liaison, are there practices that you promote from that, that leadership position that you promote to liaisons to increase student success in those courses?
So yes, if you have a lab facilitator, for when those students are in the library and they're actually actively checking on them, in addition to myself weekly. But if you have a lab facilitator that says, hey, how you doing? Any questions, any problems, that they may, it's an adult that might be able to definitely check on them. Where are you in progress? Let me see your grade for this week. Oh, great. That's fabulous. Give them some feedback. Give them some, so they don't fall behind, just in case. Because kids, that's how they do sometimes, especially with an online class. And so lots of student individual motivation and want and to do their work, And so that has been very helpful for us. And we do also include our students together, like in classes, and they're gathering in the library. And we give them that specific amount of time or period, whatever, to work on that online APA course. So we find that very, very helpful.
Thank you so much. This has really been such a fruitful discussion thus far. So we've heard a lot about the program from a school level perspective. So I want to shift the conversation just a little bit and hear maybe more from a statewide or policy lens. And so, Deb, can you talk to us about how the state has supported the scale of APAA, and if there are any ways that the district can align their efforts around EPSOs and access to grow uptake of the program in their district? Deb, I think you're on mute.
Thank you for that. So I really think that when you talk around like the statewide scale and sustainability of AP Access for All, it really would not be possible without this really strong strategic partnership that we have between the Department of Education and the NYSWANGR. It's really that collaboration that we have with them that has been able for us to really scale the program without really placing a lot of additional burdens on districts. So I think that has been really great. And, this really came out of a COVID time where, there was a need to have, something that was scalable, that students could access, and then really breaking down those barriers. So NYSWANGR, as mentioned before, really serves as those programs partner. They manage, like the course registration, the teacher hiring, those pieces. We, as a state agency, we really provide, clear guidance to districts. So I know Michelle McMillan is on the call today. So she kind of handles some of the guidance to districts on how to embed AP Access for All into the student schedules and how to communicate these options during that advising conversations. And then how to remove barriers like lack of awareness or technology access. So, districts have that access to those toolkits, the templates, and counselor training sessions that align to AP Access for All and to also broader early post-secondary opportunities and graduation planning efforts. So that all those things together, coupled with that partnership, really does allow for access for all students. I know that my team, Michelle, leaves the early post-secondary work. We're out in the field. We hear, the questions or the concerns, and we're able to provide them with the information they need, get them connected with the folks at NYSWANGR, and just address anything that may be standing in the way of students accessing that. So it's just, built on those great partnerships, both with NYSWANGR and with our folks at the districts.
Great. Thank you so much, Deb. And so I want to thank all of our panelists for showing up today and really leading us in a rich and thoughtful discussion. So as we've heard, the AP Access for All program really does have the potential to increase access to advanced coursework statewide, but it seems like strong implementation at the schools is critical for this program to work. And so we really hope the insights that we've shared today informs work for our guests, work is in your schools, your districts, and across the state. So as we close out, I really would like to ask the panelists to take about 1 minute and share a key recommendation for AP liaisons or districts that want to expand APAA access and success. And so I'll start with you, Charles, and then maybe we'll have Tammy, Nicole, and then Deb can kind of close us out.
Sure, just kind of piggybacking on what Nicole said, if I could recommend one thing, it would be to invest in a strong liaison support and digital infrastructure. In a virtual setting, which if you take APAA courses, you are in a virtual setting. And so in my experience in a virtual setting, the students need more than just access. They need to have consistent personalized guidance. And Niswonger, through the program that they have, they give us lots of tools to use to make sure that we connect with those students and give them guidance and help them along their way, because they do tend to forget to do assignments every once in a while. And so we try to help them along and make sure that they know if they know somebody's watching, they will do it with more fidelity. So.
Thank you, Charles. Tammy, would you like to jump in with a key recommendation for AP liaisons or districts?
Yeah, sorry for the transition there. So I have found, being an educator, and I would imagine that everybody can agree that doing the right work is difficult sometimes, and it takes extra effort. And sometimes it's going way more than the extra mile, because it's all about kids. And so um, essentially the APAA program is adding another opportunity for kids, and opportunities are excellent. And so any kind of opportunity that's going to advance their overall coursework in account as an EPSO for the state of Tennessee, it's going to assist a student with improving their overall knowledge, and possibly even saving money in college is the right work. And so I just think it's as important as making sure the students are graduating. It's just making sure that we are doing the right work for the right students, not all students, but APAA may be for just some students, whereas dual enrollment would be for others, or maybe a combination. But overall, the right work is hard work.
That's great. Thanks, Tammy.
So the recommendations I would make for someone starting up an AP Access for All program at their school is to start small, because the logistics of coordination can be overwhelming at first. And that might not be small in the number of students, but small in the number of courses. A lot of liaisons said that having 10 students in one class is easier than having 3 students in 3 classes, just because of all the different places you have to go to. And then just to make sure that the students have supports. They can't handle this kind of coursework on their own, especially if they're in the younger grades, which a lot of schools are opening these classes up to freshmen and sophomores, and that's great for access, but they need some more support. So schools need to invest some staff time and some campus space to provide those supports.
Thank you so much. Oh, Deb, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, it all comes back to, doing what is right for students. And I think Tammy said that best, like this is, it does, I guess, have our educators kind of go above and beyond, but our students are worth it, right? So at the end of the day, this is what's best for students. So really, when we think about, AP Access for All, it's really, as a state agency, we've really made that clear choice to really intentionally invest in a model that reaches all students in all schools that have often been left out of advanced coursework conversations. So it's really giving those students those opportunities. So our commitment is to those educational equity for students, but our commitment is also to the educators in supporting them and ensuring that they have everything at their disposal to make sure that this is a very good partnership for them and for the students. So I guess my piece there is, if there are teachers out there that are looking to start this, there's a lot of supports out there. But at the end of the day, it is what's right for, your students, and it's giving them that opportunity to maybe succeed at something that they didn't even know that they could succeed at. And at the end of the day, walking away with that, college credit, that early post-secondary opportunity, builds in the sustainability that they will, move their coursework forward into a better way of life for them down the road. So.
Thank you all so much for this discussion. As I mentioned earlier, this has been really fruitful, and I really hope audience members has taken something away from this conversation that we had today that they can take back to their schools, their districts, or just tell a friend about the AP Access for All program. Because like many of the panelists said, this is really just advancing equity in the state for advanced coursework and really doing the work of helping students. And so I see in the chat, there are a few questions that we've had. And Amy, did you want to take over here?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Raven. We've had a few questions in the chat. State Board Chair EB had several questions about data and statistics regarding the program. Michelle has helped answer those, as well as the AP Access for All report. But one thing that I wanted to pull out from Bob's area of interest was what this program looks like at rural schools. And I think that we've touched on that in several ways, but is there anything that any of the panelists would like to add about getting rural schools involved in particular, any unique challenges or solutions, or any specific benefits for students in rural areas?
I mean, I'll just push in and just say from a statewide perspective, we've heard time and time again that, AP Access for All is the one that breaks down those barriers for our rural communities. When the schools don't have enough students interested in a particular AP course, they're not going to be able to supply a teacher for that. So this allows a student who may not have access to AP biology, but is really interested in going into a medical field one day to be able to have access to that now. Or traditionally, if they were in a rural setting and didn't have the access to a teacher, they wouldn't be able to do that. So it really does level the playing field for our students who want to have access to AP courses.
Great. All other attendees should feel free to type questions in the chat as well, and we'll be glad to share them out. I will say I have a question while people are thinking. Part of Bob's question was about how the program has grown since its inception. I'd like to build on that and ask Nicole, as you were speaking to AP liaisons and counselors, did you notice any differences in what people were finding or experiencing in their first year of implementation versus if they'd been doing this for a little while?
Absolutely. That was one of the questions we asked on the survey. So was this harder in the first year than it was in the second or third years? Because we were talking to liaisons in the third year that AP Access for All was being implemented. And so some of them had been liaisons for all 3 years. Some had only been for 1 or 2. So we learned that they had a much harder time their first year. And to speak to the specific rural context, a lot of schools in rural areas are less likely to offer traditional AP exams because of some of the structural reasons that Deb mentioned, I think all the way up at the top. They're just smaller and have fewer teachers and fewer students able to fill up a whole course. So those schools were less likely to have offered AP classes before, making it a little bit more of a challenge for some of the students and for some of the staff to support those students in the AP Access for All program. But that is something that I think was worth the extra effort, because those students now have access. And so to put the chat looks very active, looking at some statistics from the Niswonger annual report. Our paper also framed it in a different way. There were nearly 20,000 students across 66 schools who gained access to AP classes because of this program, who didn't have access before. So because now their school was able to offer AP Access for All, 20,000 students had the opportunity to take an AP class. That's a big number. So, and it's only grown since we wrote this paper. So yes, it's harder in the first year, but as the liaisons got used to it, they were able to increase their caseload, as some of them called it, of students who were enrolled in AP Access for All, and to smooth out the logistical difficulties and give even more students access at their schools.
Thank you. And that point about access is so important. I taught AP early in my career, and even for students who didn't earn the score needed to get credit at their university, it was that exposure to the rigor of college level work that helped prepare them know what was coming up in the next step and know where maybe they needed to up their game a little bit too. So one of the questions, and I don't know that we dug into this in our report, perhaps Tammy or Deb might know, if there is a comparison of the pass rate to traditional in-person AP courses versus AP Access for All, or if that's not necessarily the comparison we'd make because there's just differences in how students are experiencing this.
I'll just jump in quickly to say that we didn't have the data to answer that for our paper. So if anyone else can speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
Great. And we also had a great comment here about, oh, sorry, Tammy, did you have a comment?
I was going to say that all of our students that have been APAA students have all been successful. But with that said, we have a very high achieving population of students. So that may not be a very good comparison for all. But again, the opportunity, as Deborah said, or maybe it was you, Amy, that said, even though they don't score the 3, 4, or a 5, doesn't mean that it wasn't a success. It still gives them that opportunity to be exposed. And so whether they are high achieving or making a 5, it's still great exposure for all students.
Great. I'll just summarize a few more comments. There is a great connection between rural issues and barriers and some smaller schools or schools in urban areas that may have fewer students interested in AP classes. So I really am interested in that point that we had Marshall make in the chat. And then we had a question about, were those 20,000 AP students all new students, or was there some overlap with students who might have previously taken AP? And Nicole, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I want to clarify. So the 20,000 is the ones who had the opportunity to take AP Access for All at the beginning of the implementation of the program, not the ones who did enroll. The numbers of students who've taken it is much smaller. It's up to, I think, 3,000 about each year. When we were studying the program, it was about 2,000 in the first 2 years of implementation.
Gotcha. So it was about new accessibility to taking AP where they couldn't have before.
Exactly. And what we found was that in the first year, I think only, the students who did take AP Access for All were more likely to come from schools that had offered traditional AP classes prior to AP Access for All. But that was, I think, just a early take up of the program was at those schools who already had an existing AP culture, if you will. And so that spread to more schools as people became more familiar with the program, and the uptake increased across the state.
Great. And to your point about AP culture, I'll pull one more question from the chat if that's all right. Donna mentioned about the time it takes to educate parents about why should we try this, why shouldn't we do dual enrollment or do some other sort of program. So Nicole, Tammy, Charles, as you've spoken to parents, or Nicole, in your case, as you've spoken to counselors and liaisons, what are some strategies for helping parents understand this if maybe they didn't take AP classes themselves or hadn't heard of this?
We spoke to a lot of liaisons who did an AP Access for All night or fair to explain to the students and families, and just a lot of communications that could go home and go on social media about what this opportunity looked like. I think a lot of them were familiar with dual enrollment, especially at more rural schools than they were with AP. And so understanding what the point is a big barrier at first, but it's just a matter of communicating that to your parents and the students and telling them you can save some money here if you earn that college credit, and also the experiences are really good for you to push yourself in that academic way.
Oh, sorry, Charles.
Go ahead.
we actually do an EPSO night and include dual enrollment certifications, AP and APAA. And APAA representatives are actually there to speak to students and parents. And, you know, year one, we may have had one student, and then we know that word of mouth is the best marketing of a program. And so each year it has grown. And so, and the students have had a very positive experience with it because the APAA program is a very well organizational structure and managed very well. And the instructors are pretty awesome. All of the administrators are awesome. And so there's all kinds of supports there to help the students. And so in turn, the students' experience is very positive. So that itself sells itself.
And I just wanted to comment about the different types of schools, urban and rural. When we only used to have AP psychology. That's the only thing that we had a teacher for. And so that's the only thing we could offer. When we went to using APAA, it just opened up the door for all kinds of different students that were interested in the different opportunities that they had then. And I think that might be something that the smaller schools, no matter where they're at, could key on when they're trying to implement a program like this.
Great. Well, I appreciate this robust discussion and all the questions, answers, and engagement in the chat. I will turn it back over to Raven to close us out, but thank you all for being here for TERA's very first webinar.
Yes, thank you so much. And like Amy said, this was our very first webinar. So we were glad that we were able to share some insights from the AP Access for All program. We thought this would be a great just study to highlight. And also with the program growing, we thought it would be great to just bring insights from policymakers, practitioners, and actual researchers from this project to really try to implement best practices as people go forth implementing APAA at their schools. And so again, thank you so much for joining us. And please be on the lookout for follow-up resources that we shared a little bit today. And we'll also send out our study again. So keep a lookout for that. And we will see all of you guys at the next webinar. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.